Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. Each week we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season we're going to be focusing on horror subgenres and how they've changed over time. Hope you enjoy it, and thanks for listening. This movie wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I feel like it has a reputation for being horrible, and I don't know what I was expecting, but I was like almost disappointed that it wasn't worse.
Really?
I mean, it's not to say it's a good movie. It just like, I was like, oh, we've watched way worse for this podcast.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a great value Midsummer.
Yeah, I feel like there have been several movies that have taken ideas or scenes or feelings from this movie 100%. To inspire much better movies.
100%. Yeah. So. Yeah. That's why when I said it, why I kind of paused was like, wait a minute, Midsummer came out after Wicker Man. So they took some ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But it was interesting. I'm glad that we watched it. I've kind of had this one in the back of my mind for a while. And we had done the original Wicker Man just in a different season a long time ago. And now that we are doing our season that's made up of a bunch of mini-series on different horror subgenres, and we're talking specifically about cult horror movies or horror movies about cults, it seemed like an opportune time to watch the Nic Cage masterpiece of a performance in The Wicker Man from 2006.
Have you seen this before?
Oh, no.
Okay.
First time. What about you?
Yeah, I was working at the theater when it came out.
I had a feeling that might be the case.
Yeah. Anything, I guess, 2004 to 2006.
It was a golden time.
More than likely saw it, at the theater. Yeah. I guess I
remember watching Lord of War for free while you worked there. Mm-hmm. How many people can say they saw Lord of War? You know?
Just in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a poster for it, too. It was actually kind of dope.
Yeah.
I think it was like Nic Cage's face, but ammo was like what made it. Yeah, it was really kind of cool.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I just remember Jared Leto doing a lot of drugs in one scene, but yeah. Anyway, we are continuing to talk about horror movies about cults. Obviously, The Wicker Man came to mind, the original, since we watched that before. But then we came back and decided to do the 2006 version for this week and just to sort of recap a little bit what we've seen so far. I think we've really seen some parallels in the development of the horror movies about cults subgenre and what we saw in zombie movies before. Because with zombie movies, there were some early movies about zombies that really didn't characterize them or use them in the way that they would catch on later. So you have the movies that kind of came out in the 30s that were about like the voodoo zombies. And then you had Night of the Living Dead, where all of a sudden that was super popular and sort of defined what zombies in horror movies would become from that point forward. I don't really think we have a moment where all of a sudden cult movies all started following a template, but I do think we have some real life events. And so like we talked about before, we had some of these early cult movies where they're like this sort of exotic foreign satanic thing. And then we had all these real life cults that were in the news for various terrible reasons in the US and South America, I guess, with Charles Manson and Jim Jones. And so as that happened, you really started to see the definition of a cult in movies start to take on a form that more closely mirrored that. And so some of the things we'll be paying attention to with this one are sort of how it's maybe inspired by some real life stuff, how it compares to previous horror movies about cults that we've watched, and then maybe even some new things that were in this one that we haven't seen yet. So just kind of setting the stage. That's what you're in for this week.
It also feels good because, well, they don't know this, but we've had a little bit of a break. And so I had to remember where we were at, and you just cleared it up. So appreciate you.
It was nice. So this is a little bit of recording magic, where typically we'll record anywhere from like 4 to 5 episodes every 2 weeks, and then that gives us some slack so that if we're traveling, we got life stuff going on, we can kind of take a break but not miss posting an episode every week. Mm-hmm. And yes, this is the first time we've recorded in 3 or 4 weeks, so it was kind of refreshing to go back and just sit down and watch a horror movie and take some notes and think about it.
Yeah, it definitely was. Like when I asked you the other day what we were recording.
By the other day, do you mean 2 days ago?
Was it yesterday?
It might have been.
Yeah, I think it was. I remember Monday, but I was like, nope, not happening. But anyway, so when I asked, I was like, and you just responded back with the Wicker Man. I was like, oh, thank God. Okay, I can make this happen. Like this. Oh, I guess it was 2 nights ago. Yeah, it was 2 nights ago, but it was late. Yeah, when I got the response. Yeah, so you're right.
Yeah. But the good news is we have both watched this movie. So I'm going to give a quick intro, and then you can do your fun facts, and then we will get into this movie walked so Shutter Island could run details. In 2006, Warner Brothers Pictures brought us The Wicker Man, a remake of the 1973 British film of the same name. This version stars Nic Cage as a traumatized cop who goes to investigate the disappearance of the daughter of his ex-fiancée on a mysterious island in the Pacific Northwest. As the investigation progresses, though, he quickly learns that the island's residents are concerned with more than just their privacy. This movie was made on a budget of around $40 million and made just under $40 million at the box office. It can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video. What did you learn about this movie?
So, everything I was reading was basically saying, and I think it was probably like covering up loose ends, but basically saying like this is actually like a reimagining of it, not necessarily remake, which is how they explain the different storylines, I guess. I don't know. But the original film's writer and director, Robin Hardy, didn't like the reimagining so much he has to have his name removed from the credits. He didn't want any connection with this film whatsoever. I also had a theory that like it was okay until like it was like released kind of thing, but that's just my theory in reading the notes. But it did win quite a few Razzie Awards, which I don't think Nic Cage is a stranger to, but yeah. Anyway, so this is a reimagining or remake of the original. It came out in 76, I think. I guess I'll end on this. So basically, the director, Neil LaBute, was asked whether he thought people didn't get the film, quote unquote, get the movie, and he responded, I just think they didn't like what they got, and ultimately shrugged off the negative reception, which is something I would easily do myself. So I actually support you with that, Neil, where it's just like straight up they didn't like what they got. But yeah, those are the facts I had. I debated on even saying those because it's more so just about how it was negatively received, but those are the facts you got.
Love it. Yeah, basically I think more of the Wikipedia page for this movie was about how much people don't like this movie than it was about anything actually in it, which was kind of sad, I guess. I don't know. Weird. But like I said, I just
feel bad for rich people.
Yeah. But I had way lower expectations for it than what it delivered on, I guess, just because of reading that and knowing that, it inspired memes and such.
Yeah.
So I don't know. A lot of people don't like this movie, but I think even you have to admit it had some pretty badass papyrus font in the opening credits. So
hey, and guess what? I was in from the. No, I mean, if I'm being completely upfront and honest about it, like initially when it had started, like I remembered watching this from 2006 or from when we previewed it when I was a kid. It was that bad. Like we did not like it. Like I specifically remember we were just talking trash about the movie, frustrated, not necessarily understanding what was going on. But But when this movie first started, it actually, like, I had my phone out because I was just in that mode where it's like, I'm just gonna start doing research for this movie now, see what I can figure out, just trying to figure that out. And like immediately, like with the car wreck and everything at the beginning of the film, like I'd set my phone down and actually watched the rest of the film.
Yeah. Like that was definitely attention grabbing.
Yeah. Like where we've definitely had movies that we did for the podcast where like halfway through I just checked out because it was just like, this is not worth it. But I watched the whole thing. So, and I would also like to clarify though, we haven't, like we were saying earlier, haven't done a podcast in a minute. So like, I was just excited to get back into the rhythm of it. So it could have also been that. But.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of went back and forth on it because I was trying to figure out like what specifically did people have such a hard time with. Mm-hmm. And I think it had to be the acting for the most part.
Acting, yeah.
But we watch horror movies all the time, which means we're used to terrible acting. Like, it doesn't really feel like a horror movie without that. So maybe we're just like by far the most target audiences for this movie.
I would say that we are used to that from maybe lesser known actors.
Well, yeah, fair.
The expectation, if you're a professional, like, and major celebrity, like the expectation, I think, is that it's better. And I think during 2006 at this time, I'm trying to remember back, but I don't think Nicolas Cage had as much bad movies in his repertoire as he does now, which might be what people go back to it. But like during 2006, we were yet again, I was probably like, I was 18, but like we were young and kind of naive. And I think that we were still like, riding on, the Raising Arizona Nicolas Cage from like 87 or something, just like, we just didn't expect it. I think that that's what it is for me. It was like, he was the most overreacting actor there. And that's what frustrated me in 2023.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. But he was the overreact. Like, I didn't think the others were bad. That was the thing. It was like that main thing was my point. Like, I didn't think that the other ones maybe were expected or like what I would expect, like what we're used to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was just like not much chemistry between anyone on set ever.
It seemed like everyone was walking on eggshells when they're filming it or something. That's what I kind of felt like. Yeah. No one wanted to communicate with each other about the film. So
yeah. And there were more things that I don't think were great about it. Like, it felt very much like a made-for-TV movie or like a soap opera or something in a lot of parts, just like even the film quality. And also, I feel like they only had to film about 45 minutes of movie because there were so many flashbacks through the whole thing. Like, they were just replaying scenes with like slightly altered parts and stuff. And the whole like him hallucinating or having flashbacks got real old real fast for me. But like, I'm not trying to argue that the acting was great. I'm just saying, we watch movies with like Captain Spaulding saying, "What's the matter, kid? Don't you like clowns?" Like, we don't really have a lot to say when it comes to dialogue. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
that wasn't a great example of bad acting, Dana. That was expected for the character. Bad acting is all of a sudden like barging in a house trying to find a kid, like just screaming.
I was just amazed that he kept his jacket and tie on for all that. That's dedication to the craft right there.
And his hairpiece.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's a big thing right there for himself.
Yeah. But like you said, it definitely kept my attention more than I expected it to. I think a big part of that was he made it to the island in like the first 15 minutes. So if you think back to like Children of the Corn, there was like that long part in the beginning where you've got the young couple and they're out like trying to figure out, where they're going, and they get lost. They talk to the guy at the gas station and they're driving. And then there's the scene before that kind of sets it all up and the narration and everything. And you don't really get into like the meat of the movie until quite a bit further in. So I like that this one it had just enough setup that ended with like that big kind of attention grabbing scene, and then he's just like on his way and there.
Yeah. did the story seem put together to you, like as far as like what was going on?
Well, I actually had a couple of questions for you about that.
Okay, yeah.
One of them I'll come back to later.
Okay.
But the other is, so it set up here. Nic Cage is a small town traffic cop who rides around on his motorcycle and just trying to help everybody get home safe. And
he's kind of a dick too, for the record.
A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But at one point, a semi hits a parked car that he pulled over, and he tries to save the people inside. And there's a little girl and a mom, but the little girl doesn't seem to want to be saved. And then the car explodes, and then he's like traumatized from that. He gets a letter from his ex-fiance that her daughter is missing on this mysterious place called Summer's Isle, and he's in his feels because of the car wreck, so he decides to go help. The island is inhabited by sort of an old-timey pagan-ish cult. Mm-hmm. Who's like very private. They seem to be very focused on women and downplaying the role of men in their society. And he's trying to investigate, and then like very predictably finds out, you know, that presumably the daughter was his. And so he's going all over the island looking for her, and then eventually finds out that the cult is planning to sacrifice her in their ritual to try and bring better crop yields or something. And then he tries to save her and gets chased around the island. And then eventually you find out that they were after him all along. And then it was all just some big setup to get him there to sacrifice him, because sacrificing a powerful man, which I guess because he was a cop, that's what he was supposed to be, was more effective than sacrificing their own or something. But there's a scene towards the end when he's being basically captured by the cult, where you see a group that looks like one of his fellow cops, and then the mom and the girl from the car wreck. So was that supposed to be like somehow they survived it, or was that just him having another vision, or what would you say was going on there?
Yeah. No, I guess that was part of the question. It's just like, that's part of the thing that doesn't make sense to me as far as if that actually happened, but I don't know. Like I could not tell you.
Yeah.
Why?
Like I feel like they were trying to imply that it was like part of the setup. Like that was part of the setup to get him to respond to the letter or something.
Yeah.
But he was also having visions all the time. So I don't know. It was weird.
That, and then also like, if that's how like hardcore they're willing to go to get someone, like, do you think that they just realized at the end, they're like, oh shoot, we could just send like 2 attractive females to a bar.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
And like,
exactly. It seems like a very
like,
elaborate setup. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you guys worked really hard for that first one and realized not worth it after or something. But yeah, that's part of the beef with the film is like, there were just so many times where it's like, I don't know what the hell is happening. I don't know what's right and what's not in the interesting, you know, like maybe, what was the movie, the one you just mentioned in the intro,
Shutter Island.
You know, not in the Shutter Island way of like where it's almost on purpose. This was just like, I don't think this is on purpose. Like otherwise like he would be crazy at the end or something. I don't know. It just was confusing.
You know, you mentioned kind of earlier that you felt like Midsommar was inspired by this. I think that's like super obvious, especially because of the bear costume. Mm-hmm. But then also, I think that with Shutter Island, just that whole concept of like a police officer is on an island doing an investigation, questioning his own sanity, getting weird answers from people that kind of lead him in circles and stuff. Like, it felt very similar vibe-wise. And I think Shutter Island did it better, but I think that's also like an interesting premise for a movie, especially when you add the cult element to it. Because he didn't even like presumably really have allies there outside of Willow. And the idea that he's sort of surrounded by these people and they're getting creepier as he's there, I thought was just really interesting. It's kind of a premise for a horror movie. And it was definitely a little different than some of the other cult stuff that we've watched, because here there was like with Children of the Corn, there was the internal confusion of the cult, right? Like there was Malachi and Isaac, and then there was like conflict between them, and there was like this whole other piece. And then in some cult movies, you've got like the one leader, and sometimes there are some people who are wanting to like get away or not a part of it. This one was interesting because it was just like the cult was very unified. They were all like very on task the entire time, and you could tell that they always knew exactly what was happening and weren't ever really in any danger. Like there was never that point where you're like, oh, he might win, you know?
Yeah. The thing that I thought was interesting too about this was I feel like with a lot of cults, they are technically like secretive. You don't know what's going on internally, but like people are like always kind of welcome because that's just to get people more money. That's the way I kind of see it with joining cults. With this one, it was like they're secluded. That was like that was what they needed right there. But because of the harvest and having, that's why they bring these people on. So like, I wondered when watching this, like, I wonder if there are like, I mean, obviously there has to be cults that people don't know of, but that's a different kind of issue. But like, I wonder if there are cults that like actively like, we're just going to stay on this little island. This is our new land, kind of like what, like you were saying with the Jamestown massacre, people like they went down to South America, right? But I wonder if there are people like, hey, we could just buy an island, make this sustainable, and then whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a better solution than, I don't know, like having that distance would keep the outsiders out if that's what you want. I think the dangerous part is when, I don't know, cults get violent and then people get pulled in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we last week talked some about like horror cult tropes, and we were getting into it a little bit already, so I thought I'd bring it up. One of them was like inner turmoil in the cult. Like in the Devil's Reign, you had sort of like the traitors who had left, and that's why they were sort of wrapped up in all of that. And then obviously with Children of the Corn, you had the conflict that we talked about, but not so much in this one. Cult was united. That almost made it scarier, just because it was like, we've talked before about how a cult almost creates its own reality because it's like this closed loop of people telling each other the same story. And so the idea of being trapped in a place you can't get away from, in that, when you're not like part of it, or like that they're not right about stuff, is really scary, because it's like you're inside the bubble but with none of the delusion. And that's what this whole movie was about, is like him reacting to how messed up stuff was in their society and how they like didn't really seem to care what happened to Rowan, but then seemed to very much be excited about killing her. And then the way that they were like attacking him and hunting him down and stuff, it just all kind of played into that. And so it really wasn't the inner turmoil in this one, but it was definitely the other thing we talked about, which is an outsider getting wrapped up in it. So like finding out about the cult after they're already in danger. So it wasn't like he knew he was going to go investigate a cult. It was he was going to an island to look for a girl and then found himself trapped in the middle of one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or like with the one with Ernest Borgnine was kind of the opposite, where they kind of knew what they got themselves into with this one. Yeah. Which is like incredibly terrifying.
Yeah.
Not just to find out that you're like, oh shit, I'm in the middle of, this is a cult. I think that it's terrifying anytime you plan something, or you go somewhere thinking it's one thing and you realize it's something totally different.
That is the absolute truth.
Yeah. Like when you think that you're going to the movie theater to watch Willy Wonka, like them them showing it in theaters again, and you find out it's a children's musical adaptation of it. Yeah, that was fun.
That would be the worst night ever.
It was, man. Yeah, you think Nicolas Cage has bad? Watch these kids who can't sing. You gotta get off it. Yeah, no. But that legitimately though, like that is terrifying to think of, because you're on an island that you can't get off of. Like you're stuck, and you're there for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Another thing we talked about was how a cult kind of has its own culture that rejects modern stuff. And, I guess maybe like that contributes to the isolation. And so like with Children of the Corn, they basically didn't even have like electricity. They were very much out just like in the field. It almost seemed like very tied to nature and the corn and stuff. And then I think that's the thing that we've seen a lot in these cult movies, where the cult is very like cut off from modern society and technology. And I think that really stems from the real life examples where you see that happening over and over. And I think the reason that it tends to happen in real life is because it makes it easier to control the people when they don't have contact with the outside world. So you're kind of like espousing this philosophy of we need to simplify, we need to disconnect, but that has the added benefit of the leader being able to kind of keep people inside that bubble and not getting outside influence to question their beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes me kind of want to walk back my statement I said earlier about being on that private island, not wanting people to join. But no, that's very true.
Yeah. It just helps reinforce all the internal stuff of it, I guess, the social pressure. But
I mean, if that's all you know.
Yeah.
And you're going to be afraid to leave it,
Yeah.
Institutionalized.
Yeah, especially if like somebody's preaching all day about how the outside world is coming to an end and you're the only people that have a path to survival or whatever.
Which it's crazy if you think about it, because like people like institutionalized. I mean, that's prisoners who, don't want to leave prison because they've been in there so long, they're afraid to go out. Like it's almost like part of human nature is just, institutions prey on it, or people can prey on that, and it's just weird to think about how it's just part of us. But like I had it when I was leaving my last job, like it's just it's just we like what we know.
And then the last thing that we had talked about before was how a lot of times with these movies the supernatural thing isn't going to be controlled by the humans. So it's like you have the cult and they all worship the devil, but then when the devil shows up, it's chaos. Or they're all sort of basing their faith around the one who walks behind the rose. But then when the people start fighting with each other, all of a sudden that shows up, and then it's like completely uncontrollable and scary to cult members and non-cult members. I didn't really find that in this one. And so the question that I had for you was there anything supernatural in this movie, do you think?
Oh, no, I don't think so. No, the only thing supernatural, I think, would be whatever mental illness made Nicolas Cage have that many, those many flashbacks. But no, I mean, the only thing I could think of, like when you were talking about that, was just like how did they get to his gun and the ammo? And I probably missed a scene, was my thought. Like at the end when he was trying to shoot and they dropped the bullets.
Yeah.
That was I just don't know how that happened, I guess. But no, I don't think so. Do you?
I don't think so. But then there was that one moment when you saw like the other cop and the two women who were supposed to have died in the car wreck. And so I was like, did they have the ability to like bewitch him or something? Or like, was there something? But it really wasn't clear at all.
Yeah.
And yeah. I mean, it definitely, I think that this one falls more in line with like the real life cults, because there wasn't that big focus on like introducing something supernatural to the horror movie. It really was focused on like the people that make up this cult in that bubble of this alternate reality that they've created are the thing that's terrifying. And that I feel like is definitely taking more inspiration from reality than from like, oh yeah, the cults are this kind of foreign unknown thing and you have to be scared because they're in touch with the devil.
Yeah. I think adding on to that as well, like I think they definitely acted, technically I think they acted how like a normal cult would if they're being investigated by a police officer that was out of jurisdiction, because he was from California and they were in Washington. Like they didn't get the cops out there to get him out because what they were doing is pretty damn illegal, so it's like that added to like real life, in my opinion, real life as well, where it's like, you're not gonna, I mean, I was just watching a video of like a motorcycle club that like had a motorcycle accident. The guy was, and they were like, hey, let's just go ahead and hurry up and get out of here before the cops show up, just because not wanting to deal with it, and it's like, that's organized crime dealing with, and so that's just, I see that as a real life thing that would happen with it.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything supernatural with this for sure. I think, I don't think so.
And then
I will say, actually, I take it back, Daniel. I take it back. The only supernatural thing is how comfortable that guy was leaning over, almost touching the ground while riding a motorcycle on the highway.
That was impressive.
That was impressive and gnarly. Like, I don't know if you ever, when you rode, like if you ever look down at the ground when you're like riding, like it trips you out because of how fast.
Oh yeah. No, it's, it totally like throws off kind of your equilibrium.
It does. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So I don't know how he did that and stayed on it, but whatever.
I heard Nic Cage took riding lessons for 4 years just for that scene.
Probably. Yep. I heard he actually took, before that, 8 years to build the motorcycle just so he can then learn how to ride it.
But then they ended up using the shot BMW. Of a stunt double.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the real true magic in the film.
We should have a section called Made Up Movie Facts each week where we just...
No kidding.
Yeah. But anyway, last thing I had in my notes was going back through the list of the attributes of cults, which is from an article that we talked about kind of in the kickoff for this miniseries. Mm-hmm. And they were authoritarian control, extremist beliefs, isolation from society, and veneration of a single individual. And I think that this movie most definitely had all of those, which means, we're converging very quickly on sort of the modern definition and portrayal of cults in horror movies. And I feel like this one, maybe even more so than the old one, which I don't remember super well, is just very, very much a good mirror of society's current view of like what a creepy cult is. And so I'm glad that we watched this movie. It was entertaining to me, even though there were some coarse, heavy, rough parts, and I don't regret it.
I support that. I don't regret it either. But to tell you what I do regret, not telling you this fact. So the bear costume that was in this film, that was just thrown out there. That wasn't planned. So if Midsommar did borrow that or steal it, I'll say it. It was just a random idea that the director had.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah. With this cult, too, you talk about the authoritarian control. What I kind of noticed with this one, what I'm going to end on, is there was definitely like the main leader of it, but it was almost like she empowered all of them.
Yeah.
Where like even when she wasn't around, they were then the new authoritarian control. I say that as I just thought of the scene where like he's trying to search a house and he's like screaming and they're like, hey, you can't do that. And he was just straight up like, I'm going to do it, kiss my ass kind of thing, which was dope. Yeah. But it definitely seemed a sense of entitlement that almost had to have come from authoritarian control. So maybe just another way that they control them, but that's what I kind of noticed with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I like what you said about, I feel like every member of this cult felt very empowered by Sister Summer's Isle.
Yeah.
I feel like they were all just like on the same page, marching the same direction, ready to stop anything that got in their way.
Yeah. But all in all, we're back, baby.
Oh, yeah. We'll be back next week with another movie about cults. And then we will also be back the week after that with a movie about cults. And then we will be moving on to something else that, honestly, we haven't even discussed yet. So,
yeah. And just for the record,
more to come.
It's April 30th right now, 2022. I'm just kidding.
It is February 2020. Everything's looking up. This year is going to be a good one.
Yeah, guys. Listen, we know that we fooled you with our podcast magic, but hey, we know it's going to be a good year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, the wife and I have been talking about what would be a cool anniversary trip. And we both just really always wanted to go to Ukraine. I think in a couple of years, we'll have enough money saved to make that happen. So,
hey,
things are looking up.
Hey, I'll tell you one thing. It's not going to happen in the month of July, though. The whole world's not going to be on fire from this damn heat. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely going to be a cool year.
We're cooling down.
The next couple of years, yeah.
El Nino's not coming back.
Yeah, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
I'm actually investing in jackets because I think they're cheaper now than they will be the next couple of cold years we've got coming up.
Hey, listen, I'm right there with you, buddy. So, guys, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and also invest in winter coats. You're going to need it for the month of July.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.